I accidentally flirted with my dad's best friend. No. Actually, that sounds way less insane than what really happened. Because when I met him, I didn't know he was my dad's best friend. I just thought he was some ridiculously attractive older man with a deep voice and a wedding ring tan line that was honestly doing things to my mental stability. And before you judge me, he flirted back, which should have been my first warning sign. But no, I kept going like an idiot. A very committed idiot. And somehow, less than 12 hours later, I walked into my kitchen and saw my father hugging the same man I'd been shamelessly flirting with all afternoon. Yeah, exactly. So now you understand why I almost dropped dead beside the refrigerator. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Because this disaster actually started on a Tuesday, a rainy Tuesday, and unfortunately for me, I looked good that day. Rainy days on campus were always weird. Everybody suddenly acted like they were starring in some sad indie movie. Girls holding coffee cups with both hands. Guys standing under rooftops pretending they enjoyed the weather. Couples kissing in the rain for absolutely no reason. Meanwhile, I was sprinting across the street like a homeless raccoon because my umbrella had flipped inside out 5 minutes ago. My shoes were soaked, my hoodie was wet, and I was 2 seconds away from fighting the weather personally. Are you okay? That voice, Jesus Christ, deep, calm, warm enough to make eye contact dangerous. I looked up and immediately forgot how human interaction worked. Tall, broad shoulders, dark coat, silver watch, sharp jawline. The kind of face that looked expensive, like he belonged in one of those luxury perfume ads where nobody smiles. And somehow, he was looking at me like I was interesting. I cleared my throat. Failed. Then tried again. Depends, I said. Did the rain send you to laugh at me personally? One corner of his mouth lifted. Not a full smile, which somehow made it worse. I was considering it. Oh, so he had jokes. Great. Hot and funny, my natural enemy. I knew it. I sighed dramatically. Middle-aged men love bullying me. That actually made him laugh. A real laugh this time. Low, quiet, dangerously attractive. Okay, maybe I was flirting a little, but in my defense, he looked like that. What makes you think I'm middle-aged? He asked. I blinked. Oh my God. I stared at him. You are middle-aged. That earned me the first full smile. And wow, I needed him to stop doing that immediately. You're rude, he said. You're old. I'm 39. I pointed at him dramatically. See? He laughed again. I don't know when exactly the vibe shifted. Maybe it was the rain. Maybe it was the way he looked at me like he was trying not to. Or maybe I was just lonely enough to notice when someone paid attention to me. Either way, when he held the cafe door open for me, I followed him inside without even thinking about it. Which honestly should have been warning sign number 2. The cafe was warm. Soft music. Foggy windows. The smell of coffee and cinnamon. Very romantic. Which would have been fine if I wasn't sitting across from a man who looked like he could ruin my life emotionally. So, he said, stirring his coffee slowly, do you flirt with every older man you meet? Okay. See? He started it. I leaned back in my chair. Only the attractive ones. The look he gave me after that. Yeah, that look lasted way too long, and suddenly the air felt weird. Heavy. Like something had quietly changed between us. His eyes dropped briefly to my mouth, then back up. Slowly. Oh no. My brain completely short-circuited, because there was no way this man was actually flirting back. Right? So you think I'm attractive? He asked calmly. I laughed nervously, which was humiliating. Don't make this weird. You made it weird first. That's fair. He shook his head softly like he was amused with me, like he already knew I was trouble, and for some reason, that made me want his attention even more. Which was probably the beginning of my downfall. Actually, no. The beginning of my downfall happened 20 minutes later, when he looked at my empty cup and said, "You should let me buy you dinner." Silence. Complete silence. My brain stopped working. Because hold on. Was I getting asked out right now? By a hot older stranger? In public, I stared at him. He stared back, calm, patient, confident. Like he already knew I was going to say yes. And the worst part, he was right. Oh, I said intelligently. Very smooth. Very charming. Truly the voice of a generation. One side of his mouth lifted again. You're cute when you panic. I almost choked to death. Actually, almost died. Right there, in the café. And honestly, that would have saved me from the problem waiting for me at home. 3 hours later, I walked through my front door smiling like an idiot, still thinking about him. Still replaying every second of that conversation in my head. My dad was in the kitchen talking to someone. I barely looked up at first. Then I heard the voice, that voice, and every single survival instinct in my body activated at once. No way. Slowly, I looked up, and there he was, standing in my kitchen, holding a beer, looking just as shocked as I felt. My father grinned immediately. Perfect timing, he said. Then he pointed directly at the man I'd spent the entire afternoon flirting with. Noah, you remember Ethan, right? I swear my soul left my body. Because Ethan Brooks, the man who had asked me to dinner 3 hours ago, was my dad's best friend. There are moments in life where your brain just stops, like fully shuts down. This was one of those moments because, 1 second, Ethan was just some hot older man from a cafe. And the next, he was standing in my kitchen beside my father like he'd always belonged there. Which, apparently, he did. Dad kept talking, completely unaware that I was internally experiencing cardiac arrest. You remember Ethan, right? He repeated. Right? No, actually. I remembered flirting with him. I remembered calling him middle-aged. I remembered telling him he was attractive. I remembered him asking me to dinner. So thanks for that, Dad. Ethan recovered first. You okay? Of course he did, because, unlike me, he apparently knew how to function under pressure. He held out his hand calmly, like we hadn't spent the last 3 hours making eye contact across a cafe table like two emotionally unstable idiots. Hey, Noah. Hey, Noah? That was the tone we were using. I stared at his hand, then at him, then back at his hand. Dad frowned slightly. No, I was not okay. I shook Ethan's hand anyway. Worst decision of my life. Because the second his fingers closed around mine, that stupid tension came back immediately, warm, sharp, dangerous, and Ethan noticed. I could tell he noticed. His expression barely changed, but his grip tightened for half a second before he let go. Tiny movement. Huge problem. Dad kept talking while grabbing beers from the fridge. Meanwhile, Ethan and I stood there silently having a psychological crisis. So, Dad said casually, you two already met? The silence after that question was so loud. I laughed first. Too fast, too high-pitched, absolutely terrifying. Yep, Jesus Christ, why did I sound guilty? Dad blinked slowly. Ethan calmly saved my dignity. We ran into each other at a cafe earlier. Oh my God, the way he said it. Calm. Normal. Like we hadn't been flirting aggressively over iced coffee 3 hours ago. Dad nodded immediately. That makes sense. Ethan's always working around that area. Working. Right, because apparently this man had a job, emotional stability, taxes probably. Meanwhile, I had almost died because he smiled at me twice. Humiliating. Dad tossed Ethan another beer. You staying for dinner? I wasn't planning to. Stay anyway. Dad looked at me next. Noah, set the table. I stared at him. Actually stared. Because was this man insane? You wanted me to sit through dinner? Across from Ethan? After what happened earlier? I should have gone to my room. That would have been smart, healthy, emotionally mature. Instead I said, sure, because apparently I enjoy suffering. Dinner was torture. Actual torture, not because anything happened. That was the problem. Nothing happened. Ethan barely looked at me. Dad talked the entire time. Work stories. Football. Traffic. Old college memories. And every time Ethan laughed at something Dad said, I noticed it. Every time he rolled his sleeves up slightly, I noticed it. Every time his voice dropped lower while talking. My brain noticed it. Traitor. Complete traitor. At one point, Dad got up to answer a phone call. The second he left the kitchen. Silence. Heavy silence. The dangerous kind. I kept staring at my plate because looking at Ethan felt unsafe now. Then quietly, very quietly, he said, You should have told me your last name. I looked up immediately. His eyes were already on me. Calm outside. Tense underneath. I didn't know I needed to, I whispered back. You really didn't recognize me. I almost laughed. Ethan, the last time you probably saw me, I was like 14. Something shifted in his face at that, like the reminder hit him harder than he expected. And suddenly, the age gap felt real. Not playful, not flirty. Real. He leaned back slightly, ran a hand over his jaw, then muttered, This is a bad idea. That should have ended it. Seriously. That should have been the moment my common sense returned. Instead, my stupid heart sped up. Again, cool. Amazing. Because the way he said it didn't sound like he wanted to stop. It sounded like he wanted a reason not to. Dad walked back in before either of us could say anything else. And just like that, the tension disappeared again. Or at least, pretended to. By the time dinner ended, I was mentally exhausted. Dad went upstairs to take a call, which left me alone with Ethan near the front door. Why did life keep doing this to me? He grabbed his coat slowly, still avoiding my eyes. About earlier, he started. My stomach dropped instantly. So this was the rejection speech. Love that for me. Then finally, he looked at me. And God, reasonable. Tiny. I joke all the time. That was the problem. Ethan looked at people too intensely, like he saw more than he should. What happened at the café, he said carefully. Can't happen again. There it was. Expected. Smart. So why did it still sting a little? I crossed my arms casually, or at least I tried to look casual. No worries, I said lightly. I'm not emotionally destroyed or anything. That actually made him smile. Quick, but real. You joke when you're uncomfortable, he said softly. Excuse me? Why did that feel weirdly intimate? I noticed. The silence after that felt warm. Too warm. And for one completely insane second. I thought he was going to touch me. Instead, he stepped back. Put distance between us again. There's too much history here, he said quietly. History, right, Dad. Family, trust, real life. Not cafes and flirting and rainstorms. Something in my chest sank a little, and maybe Ethan saw it. Because his expression softened immediately. That was somehow worse. Then he walked out the door. Good night, Noah. And I stood there staring after him like an idiot. Again. I was still standing there 5 minutes later when Dad came downstairs. He looked toward the front door, then at me, then smirked slightly. Oh no. My entire body tensed. What? Dad pointed directly at my face. You have a crush. I almost inhaled my own soul. A what? Dad started laughing immediately. Relax, drama queen. I meant the barista or something. Oh, thank God. I forced out a laugh. Very normal. Very believable. Definitely not the laugh of a man hiding several emotional crimes. Dad shook his head while walking past me. You're terrible at hiding things. The way my heart stopped. Insane. Because if Dad noticed anything, I was finished, absolutely finished. That night, I told myself I wouldn't think about Ethan anymore. Very mature, very healthy. Then at exactly 12:47 a.m., my phone buzzed. One text, unknown number. I already knew who it was before opening it. Ethan. And all the message said was, you looked disappointed when I left. I stared at that text for a full minute. Then another. Because what was I even supposed to say to that? And worse, why did my chest suddenly feel warm again? I should not have answered that text. That's the first thing you need to understand. A smart person would have ignored it. A mentally stable person would have blocked his number. A person with survival instincts would have thrown their phone into the ocean. Unfortunately, I am none of those things. So instead, I stared at Ethan's message for 10 full minutes like it personally offended me. You looked disappointed when I left. Sir? What kind of emotionally dangerous sentence was that? And the worst part, he was right. I had looked disappointed, which was humiliating, insane behavior, not disappointed, hard, ow. Because this man rejected me politely, then texted me afterward to discuss my facial expressions. I typed, deleted it. Typed, you wish. Deleted that too. Then finally I sent, you text all your friends' sons after midnight? The typing bubble appeared immediately. Immediately. Oh, so he was waiting too? Interesting. Then, only the ones who flirt with me in cafes. I dropped my phone directly onto my face. My roommate Marcus looked up from his gaming setup. What now? I grabbed my phone dramatically. I'm being psychologically attacked. He blinked. By who? An older man. Slowly turned toward me. I told him everything. Well, almost everything, not the dad part. How old? I hesitated. Too long. What? How old is he? 39. I stared at the ceiling. Marcus immediately paused his game. Oh, this sounds messy. You have no idea. Because if Marcus found out I accidentally flirted with my father's best friend, he would literally ascend into another dimension from excitement. So instead I said, I met this guy at a cafe yesterday. Marcus narrowed his eyes immediately. His mouth fell open. Noah! Marcus screamed. Actually screamed, then stood up dramatically. Oh, you're sick. Relax. 39? He looks younger. That is not helping your case. I rolled my eyes. He's not even that old. Marcus stared at me like I'd joined a cult. You sound brainwashed already. Honestly? Fair. Because somehow, after one afternoon, this man had completely invaded my thoughts, which was ridiculous. I didn't even know him. Not really, and yet I kept replaying everything. S smile, S voice, E way he looked at me, E way he said my name, especially the way he said my name like it meant something. Marcus grabbed his hoodie dramatically. Nope, I need snacks for this conversation. 20 minutes later, we were sitting on the kitchen floor eating chips while Marcus listened like he was receiving military intelligence. Like he was trying very hard not to cross a line he already wanted to cross. And somehow, Noah. That made me want him more. Horrible. Terrible. Awful for my personal development. My phone buzzed again. Marcus lunged instantly. Read it. Get away from me. I looked down slowly. Ethan, you stopped replying. Marcus made a sound so loud it scared both of us. Oh, he's obsessed. He is not. He texted twice. That means nothing. It means everything. I ignored Marcus completely, mostly because I was too busy staring at the message again. Then finally I typed. Maybe I fell asleep. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Then appeared again. Why was he nervous? Finally, liar. I smiled before I could stop myself, and Marcus saw it immediately. Oh, you like him. I barely know him. That has never stopped anybody. Again. Fair. I ended up texting Ethan until almost 2 in the morning. Not flirting exactly. Just talking. About random things. Movies, music, chai texture, ledge, ribal coffee in storms, and somehow the conversation felt easy. Too easy, that was the dangerous part. With most people, conversations felt like work. With Ethan, it felt natural, warm, like sliding into hot water after being cold all day, and every time my phone buzzed, I smiled, like an idiot. I'm young and mysterious. Rude. No reason. Then shrugged. Oh, by morning I had slept exactly 3 hours, which explained why I looked half-dead walking into the kitchen. Dad glanced up from his coffee. You look terrible. Love you too. You out partying. I grabbed orange juice dramatically. You're sleep-deprived. Dad smirked into his coffee, then casually added, Ethan stopped by after you left yesterday. The orange juice nearly killed me. What? Dad frowned. Why are you yelling? I coughed aggressively. Dad gave me a suspicious look. He forgot his watch. Okay, cool. Normal. My heart definitely did not just explode for no reason. Dad kept talking. You know, it's weird seeing you two interact now. My stomach dropped instantly. What do you mean? Dad leaned back slightly. You're adults now. Last time Ethan really spent time around you, you were a kid following us around asking annoying questions. Excuse me? I was adorable. Dad ignored my offended expression, but yesterday felt different. Abort mission. Abort immediately. I tried to sound casual. Different how? Dad shrugged again. I don't know. You actually talked like equals. Equals? The word hit weirdly hard, because that's what Ethan kept fighting against, wasn't it? The fact that I wasn't a kid anymore, that he looked at me now and saw me, not Daniel's son, just me. Dad stood up to leave, then paused near the doorway. Oh, Ethan invited us to his place Saturday. I froze. What? Dad looked confused. Barbecue, why? Saturday, at Ethan's house, a whole evening around him. Absolutely not. Absolutely. Actually, yes. Definitely yes. My brain was already betraying me. Dad smirked slightly. You okay? I answered too fast. Yep, Then he left, and I stood alone in the kitchen staring at nothing, because suddenly Saturday felt very far away, and not far away enough at the same time. My phone buzzed again. Ethan, just one message. Try to get some sleep tonight. And for some reason, how to flirt subtly. It's called thirst. That soft little sentence hit harder than the flirting did. By the time Saturday arrived, I had officially lost my mind. There was no other explanation, because normal people do not spend 2 hours choosing an outfit for a casual barbecue. Normal people do not stare at themselves in mirrors thinking, does this shirt make me look emotionally unavailable? And normal people definitely do not Google at 3 in the morning, yet somehow Here we were. Marcus watched me change shirts for the 4th time with the exhausted expression of a man who had suffered enough. You know this is getting pathetic, right? It's called effort. Rude. I pointed at him dramatically. You don't understand the psychological warfare happening right now. Marcus grabbed his keys. That man has you acting like a Victorian woman waiting for a love letter. Honestly? Again, fair. The drive to Ethan's house was torture. Dad kept talking the entire time while I sat there pretending not to feel like my organs were collapsing. And apparently the city delayed the project again. Dad sighed. You're not listening. I'm listening. What did I just say? Construction. Dad narrowed his eyes. You're acting weird today. Panic. I looked out the window immediately. No, I'm not. You definitely are. Before I could respond, Dad pulled into Ethan's driveway, and suddenly, nothing else mattered. Because Ethan's house looked exactly like him. Clean, modern, sharp lines, warm lights glowing through huge windows. The kind of place that looked calm on the outside while secretly ruining your emotional stability inside. Very fitting. Cars already lined the driveway. Apparently this wasn't a small barbecue. Great. Even better. More witnesses for my downfall. The second we stepped inside, I saw him. And oh, no, that was actually unfair. Dark jeans, black long-sleeve shirt, sleeves rolled up, hair slightly messy, like he'd been cooking all afternoon. Meanwhile, I suddenly forgot my own name. Ethan looked up from across the room, then froze slightly when he saw me. Not dramatic, not obvious. Tiny, but I noticed. His eyes moved slowly over me once. Very quick, very controlled, still devastating. Then Dad slapped my shoulder. Ethan! And just like that, the moment disappeared. Ethan recovered instantly. Glad you made it, he said calmly. Calmly? Meanwhile, my nervous system was in flames. Dad walked off immediately to greet people. Traitor. Absolute traitor. Leaving me alone with Ethan near the kitchen. Again. Why did this keep happening? For a second, neither of us spoke. The noise of the party blurred around us. Music. Laughter. Glasses clinking. But somehow, the silence between us still felt louder. Then Ethan said quietly, You look nice. My brain fully disconnected from reality. Because he said it so naturally. So softly. Thanks. Great response. You seem nervous. That tiny smile appeared again. The dangerous one. I hated that smile. Loved it. Less teasing, more careful. That's intentional. There it was again. I crossed my arms, like the compliment slipped out before he could stop it. I looked down stupidly. Incredible charisma. He leaned slightly closer. I'm not nervous. You almost walked into the wall when you came in. That could happen to anyone. God. Hated it. You've been avoiding me, I accused quietly. His expression shifted immediately. That wall he kept trying to put between us. Why text me all week then? Bad question. Very bad question. Because the look Ethan gave me after that felt too honest, too exposed, like I'd accidentally hit the real answer. Finally he sighed softly. Because apparently I lack self-control. Oh, that sentence hit way harder than it should have, and suddenly the tension between us felt different again. Closer, warmer, dangerous. A group of people entered the kitchen laughing loudly. The moment broke instantly. Ethan stepped back. Distance again. Always distance. I was starting to hate it. The next hour was actual torture, not because Ethan ignored me. Worse, he paid attention to me constantly. Tiny things. Handing me drinks first, remembering how I liked my burger, glancing at me across conversations, quietly checking if I was cold outside. Little things. Domestic things. I swallowed hard. Things that felt weirdly intimate. And every single time, Dad noticed nothing, which honestly felt medically impossible at this point. At one point, I was standing alone near the back patio trying to mentally recover, when Ethan appeared beside me quietly. Of course he did. You disappeared, he said. I looked out toward the yard. Needed air. You're overwhelmed. You make me overwhelmed. The words slipped out accidentally, and the silence after them. Jesus Christ. I felt Ethan look at me before he finally spoke. Careful. That low voice again. Soft. Dangerous. You keep saying things like that because you keep looking at me like this. My heartbeat went completely stupid. What does that mean? Ethan finally turned toward me fully, and for the first time since meeting him, he looked genuinely conflicted. Not calm, not composed. Conflicted, like fighting himself was becoming exhausting. You know exactly what it means. The air between us tightened instantly, and suddenly I became hyper-aware of everything, how close he was, how warm his voice sounded, the way his eyes stayed on mine too long. Then, quietly, almost frustrated, he said, "This needs boundaries. Boundaries. Right. Because apparently the universe hated me personally." I forced out a laugh. Wow, that sounded serious. It is serious. The softness disappeared from his voice completely now, and somehow that hurt more. "You're Daniel's son." Ethan exhaled slowly. "Then what is this? Big mistake." "Yes, there it is. You think this is simple?" "No," I snapped quietly. "I think you keep acting like I'm a mistake you accidentally made." His expression changed immediately. Sharp, intense. "That's not what this is." Huge mistake. Because suddenly Ethan stepped closer. Not enough to touch me. Enough to ruin my emotional stability. "You want honesty?" My throat went dry instantly. He held my gaze for a long second. Then finally, very quietly, "You walked into a café and flirted with me like you had no idea what you were doing." My stomach flipped. "And now," he continued softly, "I can't stop thinking about you." Silence. Complete silence. I forgot how breathing worked. Because that was the first truly honest thing he'd said to me. No teasing, no walls, just truth. And somehow, that truth felt terrifying. His jaw tightened slightly. But none of that changes the situation. There it was again. Reality, Dad, trust, consequences. Ethan stepped back first. Of course he did. Always him. Always control. "We need rules," he said quietly. "Rules? Excuse me?" This suddenly sounded way too serious. I stared at him. What kind of rules? No more flirting. Immediate failure already. No late-night texting. Emotionally devastating. And no being alone together. I blinked slowly, then laughed once in disbelief. You realize we're literally alone together right now. That actually caught him off guard. Tiny crack in his composure. I saw it, and for one dangerous second, I realized something important. Ethan Brooks was not nearly as in control as he pretended to be, which meant one very dangerous thing. I wasn't the only one losing this fight anymore. The problem with Ethan's rules was that he immediately started breaking them. Not me. Him. Which honestly felt illegal. Because how are you going to stand there looking like a stressed-out romance novel and say, "No more flirting," then text me 30 minutes after I leave your house? Make it make sense. I was lying in bed staring at my ceiling when my phone buzzed, and the second I saw Ethan's name, my heart betrayed me immediately. Again, "Ethan, you ignored me the rest of the night." I sat straight up. The audacity. I typed back instantly. "Aren't we supposed to have rules now?" 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. That man really thought before texting, which somehow made every message worse. Finally, I'm aware. I laughed out loud, missed completely. Actually laughed. Because what kind of response was that? Marcus looked over from his desk. "You're smiling at your phone again." "I hate you." "That's not denial." I threw a pillow at him. "Tragic." Marcus grinned slowly. "Oh my God. Okay, forbidden romance. Yeah, cool. Awesome. Not terrifying at all." My phone buzzed again. "Go to sleep, Noah." Then typed, "Make me." I regretted it. Immediate regret. Full body regret. I need to die. So, are we finally admitting older man daddy issues, or? He raised both hands dramatically. "But just so we're clear, if this turns into a forbidden romance situation, I deserve credit for supporting you emotionally. Ethan." I stared at the message suspiciously. The second I hit send. Because why did I say that? Marcus saw my face instantly. "Oh, you sent something stupid." "Read it. No. Noah." I refused, mostly because I was too busy internally screaming. 3 dots appeared, then stopped, then appeared again. Ethan was taking way too long, which meant one of 2 things. Either I'd scared him, or he was thinking something dangerous, and honestly, both options terrified me. Finally, his reply came through. "Careful." That was it. Just one word, one stupid word, and somehow it hit harder than paragraphs, because I could feel the meaning underneath it. Careful. Like, careful what you start. Careful, because I want to answer that properly. Careful, because I'm trying very hard not to lose control. My brain short-circuited instantly. Marcus snatched my phone before I could stop him. His eyes widened immediately. "Oh, that man is down horrendous. Give me my phone. He's warning you like a vampire in a fantasy novel." That's enough out of you. Marcus handed the phone back dramatically. Noah, he pointed directly at me. That man is one emotional breakdown away from kissing you against a wall. Silence. Then, you think so? Marcus screamed. The next few days became torture in the weirdest way possible, because Ethan stopped acting distant, which honestly felt more dangerous than the avoidance. He started texting first, sending random photos, asking if I'd eaten, remembering tiny details I mentioned once, and somehow, those small things felt more intimate than flirting. That was the real problem, not attraction. Care. At one point, I casually mentioned having a presentation Friday morning, nothing important, just conversation. Friday at 8 a.m., my phone buzzed. Ethan, good luck today. I stared at the message for a full minute. Because what? Who remembers that? And worse, why did that soft little text make my chest ache slightly? This man was becoming dangerous in entirely new ways. By Friday evening, I was officially losing my mind. Again, because Ethan invited me over, alone, technically. Well, his exact words were, I need help choosing paint samples. Be serious. You are a 40-year-old architect. You do not need my help choosing paint. But did I still go? Absolutely, without hesitation, because apparently survival instincts are optional now. The second Ethan opened the door, I knew something felt different. Not bad, just different, quieter, more personal. He looked tired, hair messy, sleeves rolled up again. That should honestly be illegal at this point. You came, he said softly. Sir? Why did that sound emotional? I stepped inside carefully. The house felt warmer tonight. No party noise. No dad. No distractions. Just us. Which suddenly felt very dangerous. Ethan closed the door behind me slowly. Too slowly. My heartbeat immediately became annoying. I brought food, I blurted out awkwardly, holding up the takeout bag. Very smooth. Very seductive. Ethan looked down at the bag, then laughed quietly. And there it was again. That softer version of him I only saw when we were alone. You really think I invited you here for paint samples? I froze instantly. Oh, this man was insane. My throat went dry. Maybe? That's adorable. Excuse me? I narrowed my eyes immediately. You've gotten cocky. You've gotten attached. The words landed hard, because they were true, painfully true. And the worst part? He knew it. I crossed my arms defensively. You're attached, too. Ethan looked at me for a long second, then calmly said, yes. No teasing. No hesitation. Just yes. And somehow that honesty completely destroyed me. The room suddenly felt too warm. Too quiet. Ethan stepped closer slowly, not rushing, never rushing, like he already understood exactly what he was doing to me. And honestly, that confidence was ruining my life. You know what the problem is? He asked softly. I swallowed hard. What? You still think you're the one chasing me? My entire brain stopped. Because hold on, before I could recover. Ethan reached out and slowly adjusted the collar of my hoodie. Tiny touch. Barely anything. Warm. His eyes darkened slightly, yet somehow every nerve in my body reacted instantly. His fingers brushed my neck lightly, intentional. My breathing completely failed, and Ethan noticed immediately. Of course he did. That calm control finally cracking at the edges. Then quietly. So quietly I almost didn't hear it. You have no idea what you're doing to me. The tension snapped so hard it physically hurt, because suddenly this wasn't flirting anymore. This wasn't teasing. This was real. And the terrifying part, Ethan had stopped running from it. Worse, he was finally stepping toward me instead. After Ethan said, "You have no idea what you're doing to me," my brain basically left the chat, like fully disconnected, because what exactly was I supposed to do after that? Laugh? Flirt back? Call emergency services? And Ethan stepped back first. Instead, I just stood there staring at him like a malfunctioning appliance. That absolute menace. Noticed immediately. One corner of his mouth lifted slightly. "You're quiet." "I'm trying to survive." That actually made him laugh softly, which did not help the situation. At all. The tension in the room felt thick now, heavy. Like something had already changed between us and neither of us knew how to undo it. Again, always him pulling himself under control before things got dangerous. "Sit," he said calmly. "Before you pass out dramatically." "I do not pass out dramatically. You almost choked on iced coffee because I called you cute. That was one time. That was Tuesday. Rude." I dropped onto the couch while glaring at him. Ethan disappeared into the kitchen, still smiling slightly to himself. "And honestly?" That tiny smile messed me up more than the flirting did, because it felt real, not careful, not guarded, just real. I looked around his living room while he grabbed plates. The place felt strangely personal tonight. Not cold like before, not intimidating, just lived in. Books stacked unevenly, blankets tossed carelessly over the couch, half-finished sketches spread across the dining table, pieces of Ethan everywhere. And suddenly I understood something dangerous. You're staring. This man had started letting me into his life. Not just his attention. His life. Ethan returned carrying food. I looked away immediately. I was observing. Suspicious wording. I'm mysterious. You're nosy. Fair. We ate on the couch while some random movie played in the background, completely ignored by both of us. Conversation came easy now. Too easy. That was always the problem. With Ethan. Silence never felt awkward. Even quiet moments felt full somehow. At one point, he glanced over and caught me staring again. Do I have something on my face? No. Then why do you keep looking at me like that? Because you're beautiful. Absolutely not. I was not saying that out loud, so instead I shrugged casually. You have a very stareable face. Ethan nearly choked on his drink. Victory. Finally, a weakness. He laughed under his breath while shaking his head. You're impossible. And yet you invited me over anyway. That shut him up immediately. Oops. The mood shifted again. Soft, warm, dangerously quiet. Rain started outside not long after. Heavy rain. Thunder shaking the windows slightly. The lights flickered once. Twice. Then darkness. Complete darkness. Oh, come on, I groaned. Ethan laughed softly somewhere nearby. Relax. I hate storms. You literally ran through one when we met. That was different. I was being cinematic. A drawer opened. Then suddenly warm candlelight filled the room. And wow, that was unfair, because Ethan looked even worse in candlelight. Softer somehow. Warmer. Like the darkness stripped away some of his control. He placed candles around the room casually. Meanwhile, I sat there watching him like my dignity had personally abandoned me. You okay? He asked. No. That made him pause, then laugh quietly again. I'm serious, I muttered dramatically. This lighting situation is emotionally manipulative. Ethan leaned against the kitchen counter, smiling slightly. You're flirting. You make it very easy. The look he gave me after that. Jesus Christ. Soft, tired, honest. Like he was done pretending not to feel this too. Thunder rumbled outside again. Then silence settled slowly between us. Not awkward, just intimate. The kind that sneaks up on you before you realize how close you've gotten to someone. Ethan sat beside me on the couch eventually. Not too close. Still careful. Always careful. But close enough that I could feel his warmth. And somehow, that tiny distance felt unbearable now. The movie kept playing quietly. Neither of us watched it. Then suddenly Ethan spoke. Low voice. Thoughtful. I haven't done this in a long time. I looked over. Done what? He stared ahead for a moment before answering. Wanted someone around this much. Oh, that hit directly in the chest. The joking disappeared from me instantly, because there was something lonely in his voice. Something real. I swallowed carefully. What happened? Ethan was quiet for a long second. Then my marriage ended 3 years ago. The softness in his voice hurt to hear. Not dramatic. Not bitter, just tired. Like he'd already made peace with it. She cheated? I asked quietly. He shook his head once. No. That surprised me. Then what happened? Ethan leaned back slowly, and for the first time since meeting him, he looked genuinely vulnerable. We stopped seeing each other. His eyes stayed fixed ahead, not physically, emotionally. Something about that answer felt devastatingly adult, not explosive, not dramatic, just two people slowly disappearing from each other. I kept thinking we'd fix it eventually, he admitted quietly. Then one day I realized we hadn't really loved each other for a long time. Silence. Rain tapping softly against the windows. Candlelight flickering between us. And suddenly Ethan didn't feel intimidating anymore. He felt human. Lonely. My chest tightened unexpectedly. You still wear the ring mark, I said softly before thinking. Ethan looked down at his hand briefly, then smiled without humor. Haven't gotten used to it yet. Something about that tiny confession shattered me a little. Because suddenly I could see it. The loneliness, the quiet house, the routines, the empty spaces, and somehow I wanted to fill them. Dangerous thought. Very dangerous thought. Ethan looked over slowly. And now there's you. The way he said it. Like I'd arrived unexpectedly in his life and ruined all his carefully built walls. My heartbeat turned violent immediately. What does that mean? I whispered. Big mistake. Huge mistake. Because Ethan finally looked directly at me. Fully. No walls, no distance, just him, and quietly. Honestly, it means I don't know what to do with this. The air disappeared from my lungs. Everything suddenly felt too close. His voice, his face, his warmth beside me. Thunder cracked outside loudly. I flinched slightly without meaning to, and instinctively, Ethan touched my hand. Tiny touch, barely there. But the second our skin touched, everything changed. The room went still, completely still. Ethan froze too. Like maybe he hadn't meant to do it, or maybe he had. Neither of us moved. My eyes dropped briefly to his mouth, then back up, and Ethan noticed. Of course he noticed. His breathing changed slightly. That calm control slipping again. Slowly, carefully. He lifted his free hand and touched my jaw. Warm fingers. Gentle. My entire body stopped functioning. Noah. The way he said my name this time. Soft like a warning. Or surrender. I don't know which one broke me more, because suddenly I couldn't think anymore, couldn't breathe, couldn't care about rules or consequences or my father or literally anything else. All I knew was him. So before I could lose my nerve, I kissed him, and for one terrible second, Ethan didn't move. My heart dropped instantly. Oh God, I messed up. I pulled back immediately. I'm sore. Then Ethan grabbed my face and kissed me back, hard, like he'd been holding himself back for weeks, and finally snapped. And oh, that ruined me instantly. The kiss felt desperate, not messy, not rushed. Desperate, like relief, like hunger. Like both of us already knew this was a mistake and didn't care anymore. My hands grabbed his shirt automatically. Ethan made the quietest sound against my mouth, and I swear my soul left my body. Then suddenly he pulled away sharply, breathing hard, eyes dark, reality crashing back in all at once. We stared at each other in stunned silence. And quietly, almost painfully, Ethan whispered, "We just crossed a line we can't come back from." After the kiss, everything got worse. And by worse, I obviously mean emotionally life-changing. Because once you kiss someone like that, you cannot go back to acting normal. It's impossible, especially when the person who kissed you back is Ethan Brooks. That man kissed like he had unresolved issues and excellent self-control. Dangerous combination. The problem was, after saying, "We crossed a line we can't come back from," Ethan immediately started acting like we absolutely should go back, which was insane behavior. Actually insane. Because one second he was kissing me like I was oxygen, and the next, he was standing across the room running a hand through his hair like he regretted every decision he'd ever made. "We shouldn't have done that," he said quietly. "Excuse me?" I stared at him in disbelief. "You literally kissed me back." "That's the problem." "Oh, so now you have self-awareness?" Ethan closed his eyes briefly like I was exhausting him spiritually. And honestly, fair, because I was exhausted too, emotionally, physically, romantically, every possible way. Rain kept hitting the windows softly while the tension between us spiraled completely out of control. "You need to go home," Ethan said finally. The words hit harder than I expected, not because he sounded cold. That was the problem. He sounded sad. Like sending me away hurt him too, and somehow that made leaving feel impossible. I stood slowly. Neither of us moved closer, because if we did, we both knew what would happen. Then quietly I asked, "Do you regret it?" Ethan looked at me immediately. Too fast, too intense. "No," the answer came without hesitation. "And God." That single word wrapped itself around my chest. "No," he repeated softer this time. "That's what scares me." Silence. Heavy silence. Then before I could stop myself, I walked toward him again. Terrible decision. Wonderful decision. Ethan watched me carefully, like he was trying to decide whether to stop me. Spoiler alert, he did not stop me. I stopped right in front of him, close enough to feel his breathing again. "You know what I think?" I whispered. His eyes stayed locked on mine. "What?" "I think you're only trying to push me away because you know you're already attached." That hit him. I saw it immediately. Tiny shift in his expression. Tiny crack. But enough. And suddenly Ethan laughed once under his breath. Soft. Defeated. You really don't know when to stop. Nope. That's dangerous. Maybe I like dangerous. Big mistake. Huge mistake. Because Ethan stepped forward immediately this time. No hesitation. No distance. One hand settled against my waist slowly. Possessively. And my entire nervous system collapsed on impact. You say things like that, he murmured close to my mouth, then act surprised when I lose control. Oh, this man was trying to kill me. I grabbed his shirt automatically. Maybe I want you to... The silence after that. Absolutely catastrophic, because Ethan looked at me like he was one bad decision away from ruining both our lives permanently. Then quietly, very quietly, "Stay." That was all it took. The second he said it, I knew I wasn't leaving, and honestly, that should have terrified me more than it did. The next morning felt strangely soft. Warm sunlight. Quiet house. Coffee brewing somewhere in the kitchen. For a few peaceful seconds, I forgot everything complicated. Then I opened my eyes and saw Ethan asleep beside me. Oh, right. That happened. The memory of last night hit me instantly. The kissing, the touching. The way Ethan kept saying my name softly against my mouth like it meant something dangerous. My face immediately caught fire. Fantastic. Ethan shifted slightly beside me, then slowly opened his eyes. Sleepy Ethan. Absolutely unfair. Messy hair. Low morning voice. Barefoot. This man was personally attacking my emotional stability. For a second he just looked at me quietly. Softly. Then, "You're staring again. I blame your face." That sleepy smile appeared instantly. God help me, this was bad, not attraction bad. Worse, domestic bad. The terrifying kind of bad where suddenly you can imagine mornings with someone. And once that starts happening, you're done. Ethan reached over slowly, brushed his fingers lightly through my hair. Tiny touch, gentle. The intimacy of it almost hurt. "You should eat before you leave," he said softly. "Leave. Reality returning again." Dad, secrets, consequences. My chest tightened immediately, and Ethan noticed. Of course he did. His hand paused against my face briefly, then fell away. Just like that, the warmth between us dimmed slightly. Not gone, never gone, just shadowed by reality again. "We need to be careful," he said quietly. There it was, the reminder. I looked down at the sheets. "I know. Noah." I glanced up again. And the expression on Ethan's face almost wrecked me completely, because he looked genuinely torn apart, like happiness itself had become dangerous for him. "I would never intentionally hurt you," he said softly. The honesty in his voice hit hard, and suddenly I understood something important. Ethan wasn't afraid of desire anymore. He was afraid of consequences, afraid of hurting my dad, me, all three of us. But despite all that fear, he still let me stay, which honestly said everything. The next few weeks became a blur of secrecy and emotional chaos, and somehow, it only pulled us closer. I started spending more time at Ethan's house, LPing him cook, watching movies, falling asleep on his couch, stealing his hoodies because they smelled like him. Which sounds cute until you remember we were hiding a secret relationship from my father. So really it was psychologically horrifying, but also kind of wonderful. That was the problem. It stopped feeling forbidden after a while. It started feeling normal, natural, like Ethan had quietly become part of my everyday life before either of us realized it. And Ethan, God, Ethan in private was completely different. Softer, more affectionate, always touching me somehow, hand on my back, fingers brushing mine, pulling me closer absent-mindedly while reading. Little things, relationship things, the kind of things that made my chest ache unexpectedly. One night I was standing in his kitchen stealing strawberries directly from the container when Ethan walked in. He stopped immediately, just stared at me. "What?" He shook his head slowly. "You're standing in my kitchen wearing my clothes, eating my food." I looked down at the oversized shirt I stole from his closet, and the look on his face changed instantly. Warm, dangerously warm. Then quietly he said, "You feel like home." Silence. Complete silence. The strawberry nearly killed me, because no one had ever said something like that to me before. Not casually. Not honestly, and the terrifying part, I knew exactly what he meant, because somehow, without noticing, Ethan had started feeling like home to me too. Then his phone rang, and just like that, the moment shattered. Ethan checked the screen. His expression changed immediately. Sharp tension replacing softness. I already knew. Dad? Ethan nodded once. The warmth in the room disappeared instantly. Reality again. Always reality, Ethan answered calmly. Hey, Daniel. I watched him carefully while he listened. Then suddenly his eyes lifted toward me, something unreadable passing across his face. Tomorrow night? He repeated slowly. Pause. Then, yeah, we'll be there. We? My stomach dropped immediately. Because the second Ethan hung up, I knew. Something was about to go very wrong. The next night, I realized the universe actually hated me. Because somehow I ended up trapped at a family dinner sitting directly across from Ethan while pretending I didn't know what his mouth tasted like. Absolutely criminal experience. Dad kept talking happily while serving food. Meanwhile, Ethan and I were out here committing emotional warfare with eye contact alone. And honestly, I blamed Ethan. Because why was he acting so calm? This man had literally kissed me against a kitchen counter 3 nights ago, and now he was over here asking, "Can you pass the salt?" Sir, be serious. I handed him the salt aggressively. Ethan's mouth twitched slightly. Oh, so he thought this was funny. Interesting. Dad looked between us briefly, then smiled. You two get along surprisingly well now. My soul evacuated my body instantly. Ethan grabbed his water calmly. Too calmly. Yeah, he said evenly. Noah's easy to talk to. Oh? Oh, that's what we were saying now. I looked down quickly so Dad wouldn't see my face combusting. You hear that? Dad grinned at me. A responsible adult finally approves of you. Wow, I muttered. Love the emotional support in this house. Dad laughed loudly. Ethan smiled softly into his drink. And somehow, that tiny domestic moment made my chest ache again. Because this was the dangerous part now, not the attraction, not the secrecy, the wanting more, wanting normal, wanting dinners and laughter and mornings and all the little things in between, which was terrifying, because this relationship didn't have a normal ending. Right? That thought stayed stuck in my chest the entire night, and apparently Ethan noticed. Because after dinner, he cornered me quietly in the hallway while Dad was upstairs grabbing something. You've been quiet. I crossed my arms. I'm thinking, that usually worries me. Rude. I looked away. This whole thing feels temporary sometimes. The second the words left my mouth, I regretted them, because Ethan's expression changed immediately. Softened, and suddenly I hated sounding insecure. He stepped closer carefully. Noah, you don't have to say anything, I muttered quickly. Forget it. No. That one word stopped me immediately. Ethan lowered his voice. Look at me. Dangerous sentence. Very dangerous sentence. I looked up slowly. And God, the emotion in his eyes almost ruined me. This isn't temporary for me. My heartbeat stumbled hard. You sure? Yes. No hesitation, none. And somehow that certainty felt scarier than doubt. Because if Ethan was serious, then eventually we would have to face reality. Dad, the truth. Everything. Ethan touched my wrist lightly. Tiny touch hidden from the hallway entrance. You don't have to question how I feel about you. The softness in his voice nearly destroyed me. Then footsteps sounded upstairs. Instantly, Ethan stepped away again. Distance. Masks back on. Dad came downstairs completely oblivious. You two good? We both answered too fast. Yep. Yeah. Dad narrowed his eyes slightly. Oh no. The silence stretched a little too long. Then finally Dad shrugged. Crisis temporarily avoided. Barely. The problem was, after that night, Dad started noticing things, tiny things at first, the kind of details people ignore until suddenly they don't. Like how Ethan always looked at me first when entering rooms, how I somehow always ended up beside him, how our conversations felt too natural, too private. And worst of all, we started slipping, not physically, emotionally. One afternoon, Dad stopped by Ethan's place unexpectedly while I was there, which should have been fine. Except Ethan opened the door wearing one of my hoodies. My hoodie. The gray oversized one I'd left there 2 days earlier. The second I saw it, my soul left my body. Dad blinked once. Since when do you wear hoodies? Ethan didn't even flinch. Psychopath behavior, honestly. It was cold. Oh my God. I almost passed away. Dad looked unconvinced for exactly half a second before moving on. But that half second, terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. After Dad left, I turned toward Ethan immediately. You almost killed me. Ethan looked annoyingly calm. You're dramatic. You were wearing my clothes. You leave your clothes everywhere. That's not the point. And the worst part, Ethan started smiling. Actually smiling, like my panic amused him, which honestly felt disrespectful. You're impossible, I muttered. You like impossible. Unfortunately, that was true. The next crack came 3 days later. And this one was worse. Much worse. Dad invited Ethan and me to lunch downtown after helping him move equipment for work. Everything was fine at first. Normal, safe. Then the waitress showed up. Young, pretty, very obviously flirting with me. And for some reason, I decided to flirt back a little. Not seriously, just enough to tease Ethan. Tiny mistake, massive consequences. Because the second she walked away, the energy beside me changed instantly. Sharp, cold, dangerous. I looked over slowly. Ethan was staring at his drink, jaw tight. Oh, this man was jealous. The realization nearly took me out. I bit back a smile immediately. Dad kept talking completely unaware while I sat there trying not to enjoy this too much. Then casually, without looking at me, Ethan asked, "So that's your type?" "Sir?" "The tone?" I leaned back innocently. "What? Friendly women?" Dad looked between us briefly. I feel like I missed part of this conversation. "You did," Ethan muttered quietly. I almost choked, because hold on. Was he actually mad? The waitress came back later with my drink, smiling again. Then she slipped me her number on a napkin. Oh no. Oh, this was bad. Dad laughed immediately. Well, damn, Noah. Meanwhile, Ethan went completely silent. Like, completely silent. And suddenly teasing him didn't feel funny anymore. Because the jealousy in his face wasn't playful. It was real. Deep. Possessive. The rest of lunch felt tense as hell. Then after Dad left to take a phone call outside, Ethan finally looked at me. And wow. That expression? Absolutely lethal. You think this is funny? The softness was gone now. Completely gone. I swallowed hard. Maybe a little. Big mistake. Huge mistake, because Ethan leaned closer instantly. Voice low. Sharp. You keep testing me. My pulse jumped immediately. The tension between us snapped tight. What happens if I do? I whispered before thinking. Silence. Then Ethan said quietly, one day I'm going to stop pretending I have self-control. And the terrifying part. I wasn't sure I wanted him to stop. After the lunch incident, Ethan became unbearable, and by unbearable, I mean hotter, which was deeply unfortunate for my mental health, because now every interaction with him carried this sharp edge underneath it, like he was one bad moment away from completely losing control. And honestly, that should have scared me. Instead, it ruined me. The problem was, once I realized Ethan could get jealous, I couldn't stop noticing it, and apparently, I also couldn't stop provoking it, which probably says terrible things about me psychologically. But listen, the man spent weeks acting calm while emotionally destroying me with eye contact alone. I deserved entertainment. Unfortunately, my entertainment choices had consequences. Big ones. It happened Friday night. Dad invited me to another one of his friend gatherings, which usually meant grilled food, loud music, middle-aged people debating nonsense for 4 hours. But this time, there were younger people too, friends of coworkers, neighbors, random guests, including a guy named Adrian. Now, was Adrian objectively attractive? Yes, tall, pretty smile, nice arms, very into me. Did I notice Ethan noticing him notice me? Absolutely. And oh, that was dangerous. The whole night Adrian kept hovering around me, touching my shoulder while laughing, sitting too close, offering me drinks. Meanwhile, Ethan was across the yard pretending not to stare holes through this man's skull, which honestly became hilarious after a while. At one point, Marcus leaned toward me holding a beer. You're smiling like a villain. I don't know what you mean. Marcus followed my gaze toward Ethan instantly, then inhaled sharply. Oh my God. What? That man is fuming. I looked back toward Ethan, and wow, Marcus was right. Ethan stood near the grill talking to Dad, but his eyes kept drifting back toward me. Toward Adrian touching me, and every single time, his jaw tightened slightly. Tiny movement, huge emotional consequences. Marcus looked delighted. You're about to get murdered romantically. I'm not doing anything. You're literally batting your eyelashes. I naturally have beautiful eyes. Marcus walked away in disappointment. Coward. Things officially escalated an hour later, because Adrian asked for my number. Directly, right in front of Ethan. Actually, right in front of him. The silence afterward felt medically concerning. I looked toward Ethan automatically. Big mistake. Huge mistake. Because the expression on his face, Jesus Christ, calm, too calm, the terrifying kind of calm, like he was holding himself together manually. Adrian smiled patiently. So? Dad suddenly appeared beside us carrying drinks. Perfect timing, absolutely horrific timing. What's going on? Adrian grinned immediately. I'm trying to convince your son to go out with me. Oh no. Oh, this was a disaster. Dad looked pleasantly surprised. Well, damn, Noah. Meanwhile, Ethan said absolutely nothing. Nothing. Which somehow felt worse. Then Dad laughed and slapped Ethan's shoulder. See? Told you Noah's attractive when he actually behaves like a human being. I almost blacked out from stress. Because Ethan's expression changed for half a second. Tiny crack, tiny flicker. But I saw it, and somehow, the jealousy underneath it looked almost painful. Dad got distracted again quickly by another conversation. The second he walked away, the air changed immediately. Sharp tension. No breathing room. Adrian looked between us awkwardly. I'm gonna get another drink. Smart man. Very smart man. The second Adrian disappeared, Ethan grabbed my wrist. Not rough. Not enough for anyone else to notice. But enough to send heat straight through my body. Inside, he said quietly, "Oh, all that tone." I followed him immediately. Obviously, because apparently I had no self-preservation instincts anymore. Ethan led me through the kitchen, down the hallway, into the laundry room, then shut the door behind us. The silence snapped tight instantly. My heartbeat went completely insane. Ethan turned toward me slowly, still calm, still controlled, which somehow made him scarier. "You enjoying yourself tonight?" That low voice? Absolutely unfair. I leaned against the dryer casually. Or tried to, depends. Ethan stepped closer immediately. What does that mean? Okay, wow. So jealousy made him bold. Interesting. Dangerous. Very dangerous. I tilted my head slightly. You seemed interested. His eyes darkened instantly. Noah. The warning in his voice made my stomach flip hard. And suddenly this didn't feel playful anymore. It felt real. Raw. Like Ethan had finally reached the edge of whatever restraint he'd been clinging to. I swallowed carefully. You got jealous. Silence. Then, yes. No hesitation. No denial. Just yes. The honesty hit me like a truck. Because Ethan never admitted things this directly. Never. And suddenly the room felt too small. Too warm. Ethan moved closer again slowly. Close enough now that I could feel his body heat. You think this is fun for me? He asked quietly. The anger in his voice wasn't explosive. It was worse. Controlled. Emotion packed too tightly underneath calm. Watching him unravel like this should have terrified me. Instead, it made my pulse race harder. I didn't say that. You let him flirt with you all night. You flirt with me all the time. That's different. Why? The silence after that question. Absolutely brutal. Because Ethan looked at me like he was fighting himself in real time. Then finally, very softly, because you're mine. Everything stopped. Actually stopped. My brain, my breathing, my entire nervous system, because hold on. I stared at him. Ethan looked almost shocked at himself too. Like the words slipped out before he could stop them. But he didn't take them back. Not even a little. Instead, he stepped even closer, one hand bracing beside my head against the wall, trapping me there gently. And, oh God, that guy out there, Ethan murmured quietly, looks at you like he wants something temporary. My pulse thundered in my ears. And? I whispered. Ethan's eyes locked onto mine. And I can't stand it. The intensity in his voice wrecked me instantly. Because this wasn't lust anymore. Wasn't flirting. This was something bigger now. Something terrifyingly real. My chest tightened hard. Ethan, he closed his eyes briefly. Like hearing his name from me physically affected him. Then suddenly he laughed once under his breath. Tired. Defeated. You have completely destroyed my self-control. The confession hit straight into my chest. And for the first time since this whole disaster started, I realized something terrifying. Ethan loved me. Maybe not in the clean, simple way people wrote songs about. but deeply, completely, dangerously. And the worst part, I loved him too. The realization scared me so badly. I stopped joking, stopped teasing, stopped hiding behind humor. I looked up at him quietly, and for the first time, completely serious, "I love you." Silence, complete silence. Ethan froze, actually froze, like the words physically hit him. And suddenly I panicked. Oh God, maybe this was too much, too fast, too... Then Ethan touched my face gently, almost carefully, like I was something fragile, and the look in his eyes after that. I don't think I'll ever recover from it, because he looked terrified and happy at the same time, then softly. So softly it almost broke me. "I love you too." And outside the laundry room, completely unaware that his world was about to collapse. My father laughed loudly at someone's joke. After we said "I love you," everything changed. Not immediately. That would have been easier. No, the worst part was how normal things felt afterward. Like somehow, loving Ethan, kissing Ethan, secretly existing in his life, had become natural to me. And honestly, that should have been the warning sign, because the universe never lets people get too comfortable before destroying them emotionally. Which, unfortunately, I learned the hard way. It happened 2 weeks later. And the worst part, it wasn't even a dramatic mistake. No giant confession, no suspicious lipstick, no shocking text message. It was something smaller, something stupid, something human. It started with movie night. Dad was working late. Marcus was out, and Ethan invited me over for 1 hour. Liar. Complete liar. Because somehow 1 hour turned into takeout containers, bad horror movies, making fun of actors together, falling asleep on Ethan's couch. Again, very domestic, very emotionally dangerous. At some point during the movie, I ended up half lying against Ethan's chest while he played absently with my hair. Soft, quiet, safe, and that was the problem. Ethan stopped feeling forbidden. He started feeling inevitable. I remember looking up at him at one point, the TV light flickering softly across his face, and thinking I could do this forever, which was terrifying, because forever was not something people like us were supposed to get. "You're staring again," Ethan murmured. "You're comfortable." That tiny smile appeared. "You say that like it's an insult." "It is an insult." His hand slid slowly down my back. Warm, absent-minded. Relationship things. God, we were so screwed. Then suddenly, the front door opened. Every survival instinct in my body activated instantly. Ethan froze, too. Both of us looked toward the hallway at the exact same time. Silence. Then, "Ethan?" Dad's voice. "Oh no, oh my God, no, my entire soul left my body, because why was Dad here?" Ethan sat up immediately, too quickly. The movement almost threw me off the couch. Panic exploded through the room instantly. Dad's footsteps got closer, and for one horrifying second, we both just stared at each other. Pure terror, no time, no plan, no oxygen. Then Ethan whispered sharply, "Kitchen, now!" I practically launched myself off the couch. Dad entered the living room exactly 2 seconds later. I barely made it around the corner into the kitchen before hearing, "Didn't know you had company." The silence afterward, absolutely lethal. I stood frozen behind the kitchen wall, trying not to actually die. Then Ethan answered calmly. Too calmly. "Yeah, Noah stopped by earlier." "Stopped by?" "Sir, I was literally in your arms 5 seconds ago." Dad laughed lightly. "Kid practically lives here lately." The words hit weirdly hard, because he said them with affection. Trust. Complete trust. And suddenly guilt slammed into my chest so hard it physically hurt. I heard Dad walk further into the living room, then stop. Silence again. Longer this time. Too long. My heartbeat became violent. Because something had changed. I could feel it. Then Dad asked quietly, "Why are there 2 wine glasses?" Oh, this was bad. I squeezed my eyes shut immediately. Ethan answered smoothly, "We were watching a movie." "Right." But the way Dad said right felt wrong. Suspicious. Dangerous. I stayed hidden in the kitchen, trying not to breathe too loudly, which honestly felt humiliating. Because what were we even doing anymore? Sneaking around like criminals? Lying to my father's face? For a second I almost walked out, almost confessed everything right there, but then Dad spoke again, and the tone of his voice made my blood run cold. "Ethan, silence." Then, look at me. Oh my God, I felt sick instantly, because I knew that tone. Dad only used that voice when something mattered. when he already suspected the answer and just needed confirmation. The silence stretched painfully. Then Dad asked quietly, "Is there something going on between you and my son?" Everything stopped. Actually stopped. Time, breathing, thought. I pressed a hand over my mouth instinctively. Waiting, praying, dying internally. And Ethan lied. No. Immediate answer. Too fast, too sharp. Dad didn't speak for several seconds. Then softly, "You hesitated." My stomach dropped so hard it hurt, because he noticed. Of course he noticed. Dad had known Ethan for 20 years. 20 years. There was no way Ethan could lie perfectly to him. I heard movement suddenly. Footsteps. Closer. Toward the kitchen. Oh no, I stepped back instinctively. Too late. Dad rounded the corner and froze. Complete silence, because there I was, wearing Ethan's hoodie, barefoot, hair messed up, looking guilty as hell, and the expression on Dad's face. I will never forget it. Confusion first, then realization, then something worse. Betrayal, pure betrayal. "Noah," he whispered. The disappointment in his voice hit harder than yelling would have. I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. Dad looked between me and Ethan slowly, and suddenly every tiny detail clicked together in his head. The tension, the closeness, the late nights, the way Ethan looked at me, the way I looked at Ethan, all of it. His face changed completely, like someone had punched him in the chest. "You've got to be kidding me." Ethan stepped forward immediately. "Daniel, don't." Dad's voice cracked through the room so sharply it made me flinch. I had never heard him sound like that before. Ever. The anger in the room exploded instantly. Dad stared directly at Ethan now, and the hurt in his eyes was devastating. "How long?" "Silence," Ethan answered quietly. "A few months?" Dad laughed once, not happy, disbelieving. "You've been lying to me for months." "No," I said quickly. "Dad, listen. You stay out of this. That hurt. Badly. Because suddenly I wasn't an adult anymore. I was just his kid again. The kid he thought needed protecting." Dad looked back at Ethan. "You're almost 40. The disgust underneath the words made the room feel cold. Ethan's jaw tightened immediately. But he didn't defend himself. Not once. And somehow that made it worse. "Dad," I said again carefully. "He didn't force anything." Dad turned toward me sharply. I trusted him. The pain in his voice wrecked me instantly, because this wasn't just anger. It was heartbreak. I trusted both of you. Silence crashed down hard after that. No one knew what to say anymore. Then finally Dad looked at Ethan one last time. And quietly, with genuine devastation in his voice, "Stay away from my son." The words landed like a death sentence. And the worst part? Ethan didn't argue, he just stood there silently, looking at me like he was already losing me. After that night, everything fell apart quietly, which somehow hurt more than if it had exploded. Dad didn't yell anymore, didn't argue, didn't even bring Ethan up, and honestly, that silence was unbearable. Because anger at least meant emotion. The silence just felt empty, cold, like something inside him had shut down completely. We barely talked the first week, then barely looked at each other the second week. The house stopped feeling like home after that. It just felt tense, like both of us were walking around broken glass pretending not to bleed. And Ethan, God, Ethan disappeared completely. No texts, no calls, nothing. At first I was angry, then worried, then miserable. By week 3, I physically felt the absence of him, which sounds dramatic until it happens to you, because once someone becomes part of your routine, their silence becomes loud. Everything reminded me of him. Coffee shops, rainstorms, black hoodies, late-night movies, architecture magazines, even stupid little things. One time I walked past strawberries in a grocery store and almost lost my mind emotionally. Horrific experience. Marcus watched me spiral in real time with increasing concern. "You look like a divorced father of 3. I hate you. You haven't slept properly in days. I'm thriving. You stared at a wall for 20 minutes yesterday. That wall had emotional depth." Marcus sat beside me dramatically. "Noah." I looked away immediately, because if I looked at him too long, I was probably going to cry, which was humiliating. "I miss him," I admitted quietly. The words felt heavier out loud. Marcus softened instantly. "Yeah," he said gently. "I know. And somehow that made it worse, because suddenly this whole thing felt real again. Not dramatic, not forbidden, just painful. Dad and I finally fought properly near the end of the month, which honestly should have happened sooner. The tension had been building for weeks. Small arguments, Sharp comments, silences that lasted too long. Then one night during dinner, Dad casually said, "You're not seeing him anymore." Not a question. A statement. Something inside me snapped instantly. "You can't decide that." Dad looked up slowly. "The hell I can't. I'm 22, and he's my best friend." There it was. The real wound. Not just me. Ethan. The betrayal. Dad pushed his plate away sharply. "You think I don't know what happened here?" I stared at him. What's that supposed to mean? His laugh held zero humor. "It means Ethan should have known better." Anger exploded through me instantly. "He didn't manipulate me." "I didn't say he did. You're acting like he did." Dad stood up abruptly. "Because I trusted him." The crack in his voice hit hard, painfully hard, and suddenly I saw it again. The hurt, the betrayal, the grief underneath the anger, but this time, I couldn't stay quiet. "I love him." Silence, complete silence. Dad froze completely. Like hearing the words out loud made everything more real somehow. I swallowed hard. "I love him," I repeated softer this time. Dad looked away immediately. And somehow that hurt more than if he'd yelled. "When did this happen?" he asked quietly. The sadness in his voice almost destroyed me. "I don't know. That was the truth. There wasn't one moment. It happened slowly. Conversations, touches, quiet nights. Feeling understood. Ethan had slipped into my life so naturally I never noticed how deep it got until losing him felt unbearable." Dad sat back down heavily. Suddenly he looked tired. "Older. I keep replaying everything," he admitted quietly, "trying to figure out when I missed it. Guilt hit me immediately." "Dad, I trusted him around you since you were a kid." There it was again. The thing he couldn't move past. The history. I leaned forward carefully. He never looked at me that way before. Dad laughed softly without humor. "How do you know?" The question stunned me, because honestly, I did know. Somehow, Ethan never made me feel watched, never made me feel uncomfortable. When he looked at me now, it felt new to him too. Real, unexpected. "I just know," I whispered. Dad rubbed a hand over his face slowly. Exhausted. "You think this ends well?" That question sat heavily between us, because neither of us actually knew the answer. "And maybe that was the scariest part," finally Dad said quietly. He stopped answering my calls too. My chest tightened instantly. "What?" Dad looked bitter suddenly. "He disappeared after that night." Something cold moved through me immediately, because that wasn't like Ethan. Not really. Unless he thought leaving was the right thing to do. The realization hit me like a truck. "He thinks he's protecting us," I muttered. Dad looked at me sharply, and for the first time in weeks, I think he really saw how devastated I was. Not rebellious, not reckless, heartbroken. The anger in his face softened slightly. Just slightly. Then quietly he asked, "Do you really love him that much?" The question wrecked me instantly, because there was no hesitation anymore. No confusion. No flirting to hide behind. Just truth. "Yes." My voice cracked slightly. Embarrassing, but honest. "Yes." Dad looked down at the table for a long time, then finally whispered, "I don't know how to fix this." That sentence broke something in me completely, because suddenly he didn't sound angry anymore, just hurt and lost. Same as me. 3 days later. I got the text. I was lying in bed half asleep when my phone buzzed at 1:13 a.m. For some reason, my heart already knew. I grabbed the phone too fast. And there it was. Ethan. The first message in almost a month. Just 3 words. "Are you okay?" That was it. No explanation, no apology. Just, "Are you okay?" And somehow, those 3 words shattered every bit of control I had left. Because after weeks of silence, after trying so hard to move on, I realized something horrifying. I still loved him exactly the same. I stared at Ethan's text for almost 10 minutes. Not because I didn't know what to say, because I knew exactly what would happen if I answered. Everything would start again, and the terrifying part. I wanted it to. Badly. My chest hurt just looking at his name on my screen. Ethan. 1 month apart, and somehow seeing his name still felt like coming home. Pathetic. Absolutely pathetic. Marcus rolled over from the other side of the room half asleep. "If you keep sighing like that, I'm calling a priest." I ignored him completely. Mostly because my hands were shaking slightly, which felt dramatic, but also fair. Finally, I typed, "No." The typing bubble appeared instantly. like he'd been holding the phone the entire time waiting. That thought alone ruined me emotionally. Then, "Can I see you?" My heart stopped. Actually stopped. Because there it was. The moment. The choice. And suddenly all the fear came rushing back. Dad. Consequences. Heartbreak. Losing everything again. But underneath all of it, one truth stayed painfully clear. I missed him so much it physically hurt. 20 minutes later, I was sitting in my car outside Ethan's house trying not to have a nervous breakdown. The lights inside were still on, warm against the darkness. Home. God. That thought alone nearly took me out. I stepped out slowly. The night air felt cold, too quiet, and suddenly I became terrified. What if this was a mistake? What if seeing him again made everything worse? What if... The front door opened, and every thought disappeared instantly, because Ethan was standing there. And oh, that man looked wrecked. Not messy, not dramatic, just tired, like he hadn't been sleeping properly either. For a second, neither of us moved. We just stared at each other across the porch silently. 1 month apart. And somehow the space between us still felt charged. Then Ethan said softly, "Hi." That one stupid word almost made me cry. Humiliating. I shoved my hands into my hoodie pockets immediately. "You look terrible." Ethan laughed quietly. Actually laughed. And suddenly my chest tightened painfully. Because I missed that, his laugh, his voice. Him. "You too," he admitted. Fair, the silence settled again, but it wasn't awkward, just emotional, heavy with everything we hadn't said. Then finally Ethan stepped aside quietly. "Come inside." And just like that, I did. The house felt exactly the same. Same soft lighting, same smell of coffee and cedarwood, same couch where everything changed. But somehow, it also felt emptier, like both of us had been surviving instead of living. Ethan closed the door slowly behind me, still watching me carefully, like he wasn't sure if touching me was allowed anymore. Honestly, I wasn't sure either. "I shouldn't have disappeared," he said finally. "Straight to it, no games." I looked away first. "Then why did you?" Ethan exhaled slowly. "Because your father was right to be angry." The words hit hard immediately. "He thinks you manipulated me." "I know. You didn't. I know that too." Silence. Then Ethan rubbed a tired hand over his face. But I still hurt him. And there it was. The real reason he left. Not shame, not regret. Guilt, always guilt. He was my best friend before any of this happened, Ethan said quietly. Losing him. He stopped there. Didn't finish. Didn't need to, because I understood. That realization hurt in a completely different way. For the first time, I fully saw what this cost him too. Not just romance, family, history, 20 years of friendship. I swallowed hard, then why text me? Big question. Very big question. Ethan looked at me for a long second, and the emotion in his face after that. God, I tried not to. My heartbeat stumbled instantly. I told myself leaving was the right thing. He stepped closer, slowly, carefully, like approaching something fragile, but every morning I woke up thinking about you. Another step. Every room in this house felt empty. Closer. And I got tired of pretending losing you felt noble. The honesty in his voice wrecked me instantly, because this was Ethan, not controlled, not careful, just real, raw, in love. I looked down briefly because suddenly breathing felt difficult. You hurt me too, I admitted quietly. I know. The softness in his voice almost destroyed me. You disappeared without even talking to me. Ethan nodded slowly. I thought if I heard your voice, I wouldn't leave. Silence. Heavy. Painfully honest silence. Then suddenly I laughed once under my breath. Small. Broken. We're really bad at this. That actually made Ethan smile slightly. Warm. Familiar. God help me. I still loved him so much. Then his expression shifted again. More serious now. There's something else. My stomach tightened immediately. Oh no. That tone never led anywhere good. Ethan held my gaze carefully. Your father came to see me last week. Everything inside me stopped. What? Ethan nodded once. He wanted to know if I loved you. I stared at him completely stunned. And? A tiny smile touched Ethan's mouth sadly. I told him the truth. My chest tightened painfully. What did he say? Ethan looked away briefly, then back at me. He said if I broke your heart, he'd never forgive me. Silence, complete silence, because, hold on. That sounded dangerously close to acceptance. Ethan must have seen the realization hit me, because his voice softened immediately. He's trying, Noah. Something inside my chest cracked wide open, because Dad was hurting too, trying too, and suddenly this whole mess didn't feel impossible anymore, just difficult, human, real. I looked up slowly, and Ethan, God, Ethan was already looking at me like I was the answer to a question he'd been asking himself for months. Then quietly he said, "You flirted with me first, you know." I laughed instantly. "There it is. I'm serious." He stepped closer again, close enough now that I could feel his warmth. "You walked into a café looking like trouble. One more step." Called me middle-aged. I snorted. "You are middle-aged. That's not the point." His hand settled slowly against my waist. Gentle, certain, and suddenly it felt like I could breathe again. "You started this," he murmured softly. I looked up at him. "Yeah?" Ethan's forehead rested lightly against mine, and the next words he spoke, I knew I'd remember forever. "You flirted with me first," he whispered. Pause. Soft breath. Then, but somewhere along the way, his fingers tightened slightly against my waist. "You became the one thing I couldn't walk away from." And just like that, everything inside me unraveled. Because after all the secrecy, and guilt, and heartbreak, we still found our way back to each other. Maybe that made us reckless. Maybe it made us selfish. Maybe loving Ethan Brooks was always going to complicate my life beyond repair. But standing there in his arms, feeling his heartbeat under my hands, I realized something quietly terrifying. If I had to do it all again, I'd still walk into that cafe. I'd still flirt with him. And I'd still fall in love. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. If you made it this far, you're officially part of the family. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next upload. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done in their situation? More unforgettable characters and emotional moments are waiting for you in the next video. Until next time, take care of yourself. See you in the next story.